Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you are now listening to Rob and Rat's World of Wonder podcast. So sit back, relax, and prepare your ears as they take you on a journey of all things weird and wonderful.
We're back. We're on.
We're back.
Episode 2, guys. We're back. Hopefully you enjoyed the last one. We're back here now to do another one of our fantastic WOW podcast. WOW standing for
World of Wonder.
So it's Rob and Rat's World of Wonder. I'm Rob.
I'm Rats.
And you are the listener. So thank you for listening into the podcast. If you enjoy what you hear here, please subscribe to our social media channels,
Which are Rob and Rat's WOW podcast on Facebook, Instagram, Rob Rat Podcast, and Twitter.
We'll get back to you with the Twitter one because we're having a Twitter flutter.
You
But
find that on Facebook too and keep
but if you like what you hear, tell a friend, and hopefully they'll tell a friend because that's what keeps us going.
friends.
Friends, yeah. And if you want to be friends, let us know. So this week's
Robert's personal number is
So this week's podcast is going to we'll just give a bit of insight for people who didn't hear the last one. Just clicked onto it. If it's your first time listener, welcome to the show. We are doing wonderful and weird stories from around the world. We're looking at them. We're going to talk about them. We're going to investigate them in our own kind of strange investigationary way. That's not a word, but and maybe interview and talk to a few people who may have some more insight and thoughts on the particular topic that we're talking about. If you have a topic you'd like us to cover, drop us a line. So this week's one is that is supposed to be the X-Files theme tune, whistle badly, is going to be on UFOs, aliens, ETs, extraterrestrials, alien life.
This is something that freaked me out as a child.
Tell me why.
Just I found them freaky, the big eyes and everything.
Yeah.
That's what I associate aliens as.
And would you think about, the ET movie with the weird kind of looking guy, or are you more of like a kind of like a...
Yeah, I wouldn't associate ET now. To me as a child that was more like a Muppet or something.
Yeah.
Aliens, big black eyes, big heads. Do you know what I mean?
Grey. The greys.
Long fingers.
Yeah, long fingers, because the fingers, a lot of people seem to get probed. Probing was a big thing going around for a while, but we'll get into that. So we're not going to get into probing, but we're going to. So basically, the whole thing with UFOs and aliens and all that.
We want to know what it feels like to have been probed
by an alien. So we've been trying that out ourselves. We bought this kind of alien finger online. Well, it's like a big grey dildo. No.
That's
Check out the video. No. So basically, anyway, 1947. Roswell, New Mexico.
Yes.
A man had something crash land into his field.
Yes, this is massive Roswell.
Yeah, right. So he crashed and landed into his field, and then he claimed to say it wasn't something that he'd ever seen before. It wasn't like a plane, wasn't something, but it came out of the sky, crash landed in the field, made the newspapers for a little bit, went away again, and then it became a lot more popular. People came out, but the government started to kind of close down, keep it quiet, and wouldn't say what it was for a long time. Which, when you tell people they can't talk about something, they get quite excited and they want to hear about it.
Yeah.
It became massive. Roswell, that's where the whole thing with Area 51 spanned from.
Yeah.
But what the American government then came out later on and said that what it was a weather balloon.
I remember that, yeah.
So they're saying that they were having these big weather balloons and they're putting them high up into the sky for weather purposes and finding out whatever. And then they later on came out and said that it was some sort of spy craft, but they didn't want to give their information away because the Russians and them were at some sort of technology war. So they said that is their excuse for what it was, but people will not take that. They will not believe it. They believe that it was a alien spaceship or an alien something or other that crash landed and that the American government are covering it up and lying to them. Area 51 then has been a big controversy for years and years and years. There was talks of people claiming to have worked there, that have seen alien spacecrafts, people who have gone out there to try and see things flying in the sky at night time. It's still like it's massive industry. Yeah. People go there all the time on their alien hunting holidays, and it's an unknown.
There's a lot of secrecy anyway.
There is. Yeah. You're not even told why it's called Area 51.
Yeah.
So it is quite weird. There is a lot of nuclear testing and all that done out in the area, and there's a lot of secrecy. But people like the. Shh, don't talk about it. Yeah, who's that man in a black suit? He's pressing that button. Ting! I don't remember anything. That's my Men in Black reference. It was pretty bad. But okay, so I did actually see something just online yesterday or the day before. On this September 20th, they're trying to get a petition going to get 500,000 people to storm Area 51.
What?
Yeah, they want
Actually
to get in there,
in.
go in there. For they reckon 500,000 people, if they can get them all to go there at the same time, they can't stop everyone. They can't shoot everyone. They can't stop everyone.
But who in the right mind is going to lead the forces of going in?
Me.
Have you seen
I am.
this?
I'm going to do it. No, I haven't. No, I'm not going to do it. No. First of all, I don't think it's a good idea.
Okay. I thought you were actually going to tell me there.
No, I was going to just see for the crack. I haven't followed it up enough. I didn't really get into it.
Sign the petition anyway.
I may do so. If I can find it again, I'll stick it up on our social media. But that is something that I've just seen recently that they're talking about doing, which is kind of interesting in its own. So what have I got to talk about here today? So basically, Area 51. So another thing I was thinking about is when you hear stories about aliens, it's always like Americans, right? It's always kind of like some guy in the middle of nowhere who got picked up by a spaceship in the middle of the night, and he got brought on board a ship, and generally they do get probed or they get implants put into them or something happens, but you don't really hear about stuff homegrown here in Ireland. But I've done a bit of research, done a bit of investigating, if that's what you can call it, online, just Googling stuff really. And there have been some reports in Ireland. And one of the interesting things that happened was a number of years ago, I think it was 2016, possibly, and I have some audio that I want to play for you. It's of a couple of pilots who were flying commercial airlines.
Okay.
Just over Kerry. Kerry, and they spotted some things in the sky. And they reported it through the radio to the airline authority.
Okay.
I sent an email to the Irish Aviation Authority.
Okay.
And I got nothing back. They didn't reply to me. So whether or not they just think I'm a hack and they don't want to talk to me, or they're just not talking about it. But it's interesting. It's only a short little clip, and you can get it on our website.
Yeah, we'll have it on.
So I'm going to play that for you now.
Okay, sir, there's nothing showing on either primary or secondary.
Okay, it was moving so fast, it's actually 10 mil of the sea, but yes, thank you.
990. 505, thank you. Alongside you?
Just to come up on our left-hand side and then rapidly veer to the north. Being so bright light and then it just disappeared at a very high speed. We were just wondering, we didn't think it was likely political, so just wondering what that could be.
Meteor or another object making some kind of re-entry. Appeared to be multiple objects following the same sort of trajectory. But very bright where we were.
Okay, that's copied, and is there a direction it was going in or anything? Right, it's copied, thank you.
The Virgin 76 also saw that in our 11 o'clock position. Two bright lights.
Roger, that's copied, thank you.
Glad it wasn't just me? No, very interesting that one.
Say again? Okay, thank you.
Virgin 76. I saw two bright lights at 11 o'clock. Seemed to back over to the right and then climb away at speed, at least from our perspective.
Okay, we're passing that on there, thank you.
Speedbird 94, Shannon.
That's all good.
Just so you know that other aircraft in the air have also reported the same thing, so we're going to have a look and see. Roger, okay, thank you.
Okay, so you just heard that. So that is audio from. There's an app that you can download, and it gives people who are into plane spotting and sort of that. You can listen to the airwaves of what's going on between like airports and pilots, and that is a BA, which is British Airways flight, and Virgin Airways pilots, basically reporting to the Irish Aviation Authority in Shannon Airport that they have spotted something going at a high speed and moving at strange angles in the sky, and there's multiple people reporting that.
And there was bright lights.
Bright lights.
Is the bright lights on the thing, or just they saw the bright lights?
So it said it was moving so fast, and it came up on the left hand side and then rapidly veered to the north. It was very bright. It was a very bright light, and then it disappeared at very high speed.
God, that is mad.
So that's the 9th of November in 2018. So that's only like last year.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to put that up, and that was reported in the Guardian and in the Irish Times, and it's widely available on the internet, that audio.
Yeah, and you can listen to it on our.
So the audio isn't amazing, but that's what you get when you kind of listen into airline stuff.
I can imagine.
I don't think all of it is available, but it's they're credible pilots. They're not just like kind of.
And they don't seem too phased by it.
They don't. They're just reporting what they're seeing. So there's talk. People are saying, because as I said, I emailed the Irish Aviation Authority, but no one got back to me. The people, it could be a meteor, it could be anything, but it also could be. Well, but that is what you say if you don't know. So a UFO is an unidentified object. There's no reason to say that it's something driven by an alien, but.
But what is, explain what it is. It's mad.
It is, yeah.
They would, as you said to me, they'd be used to seeing things
in the sky,
flights.
and they'd know that, like, if something moves at hyper speed like that,
they're a bit.
because they're in a plane, they're going pretty fast, and they, you know what I mean. And maybe a military aircraft, you don't know, but that is it's interesting to hear something in an Irish voice coming from over in Ireland. There have been reports recently as well coming out about American pilots, like military pilots, who've said they've seen things. There is some footage. I watched it today, and I'm just not sure, because the thing is, like with stuff like this, it's a little dot in the sky. It's a light. It's hard to say what is that or what. You know what I mean? It could be anything. It could be a satellite. It could be a weather balloon. It could be some military aircraft. It could be a drone.
A balloon wouldn't take off that
could
quick.
Be a drone.
A drone wouldn't go that.
But military stuff, you don't know what they've got
I
going
don't know
on.
what they have,
But yeah, it's quite interesting. So, okay, as I said, a lot of the stuff seems to come from America, and it's always kind of stuff that you can't really see very well, and it's all pixelated heavily, or it's bad. It's just lights moving in the sky. You don't often hear about a report of some guy driving down the road, and he turns the corner, and there, standing on the road in front of him, is an alien.
Jesus.
Until now.
Yeah. Okay.
I've got an interview with a guy that we're going to play for you now.
Oh, lovely.
And this is a guy, he's from Wales, and he was on the Tannoy Road, which is in Armagh, up the north of Ireland, not far from Newry, which is kind of border country. And he's had an experience, and he is going to tell us all about it.
Lovely.
So we'll be back after this.
I'm excited.
Here we go. So, I've got Arfon Jones here on the line. Arfon has had quite an experience, and he's been good enough to join us to talk about it. Hello, Arfon.
Hello there, how are you?
I'm good. So, Arfon, if I'm correct, you're a Welshman living in Northern Ireland, is that correct?
Yeah, I've been a few years now, moved over here, and I ended up staying here.
Lovely stuff. And so, I suppose we might as well just get right into it. If you want to just take it away and maybe tell me a bit about what happened on that day, back in May 2016.
Yeah, well, a lot of people, if they have an experience, they tend to not speak out about it. But in my case, I was driving down Tannoy Road, and it was a lovely weekend in May 2016. Beautiful day, sunny, blue skies, and I just came. There was the road that leads from Market Hill to Points Pass, and I was coming around this corner, and just wasn't expecting it at all. It was just standing in the middle of the road in front of me. And this thing was like, you could say 6 feet plus. It was tall. The legs was, you'd say skinny legs, but looked very strong, right, and the body itself was a bit like I would describe it like a pod. It had 3 muscles that would have run down the front of it. Okay. And as we are a person, you have shoulders, you're quite wide.
Yeah.
It was like that, but as it ran down to the hips, it narrowed down. You could kind of more or less, the way I would describe, put your hands pretty much, around the bottom of it,
Okay.
And the legs attached on to the side. It was very, very narrow at the bottom part.
What colour was it?
A very, very dark blue. I describe it as a grey, between a grey and a blue, but really it has a tinge of a really blue, like a blue in it,
Okay.
And that was the thing that kind of struck frightening to me as you're coming towards it. This thing was there, and it had its back towards me, and the tail, this tail just like swung around. It's a bit like it didn't fall down, as a dog's tail or a cat's tail would go down. It just swung back and forth, And looking at that, the thoughts that were going through my mind at the time was, you're shaking, you're just shaking with, you can't believe what you're seeing. I won't repeat the words that came out of my mouth at the time because it was shocking. I repeated these words a couple of times. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe, look at you, I said that, look at you. But it was, looking at it, I could have knocked it down.
Yeah.
And some people say to me to this day, why did you not knock it down?
Some people wonder why you didn't knock it down.
Why? I had it in front of me. Like most people would say, they see an ET or an alien or something. They would see something and it's gone. Like you see a craft in the sky. The person can only get a photograph if you're lucky. But this thing was on the road in front of me, and I in a split seconds, I could have just put my foot in the accelerator and just mowed it down.
Okay, so you're talking about hitting it and then proving that having the body there is what you mean. Okay.
Yeah, but there's a part of me inside that was going, no, this is wrong, and I feared for my life. Kind of, I wasn't going to see my kids again. Time's up. If you had have attempted to do something like that, and it's not in my nature. It wouldn't be in my nature anyway to hurt anything,
Yeah.
And I just, in some kind of a way, I thought maybe it was a test of sort, because it had its back towards me, and as it turned around, it stood proud in front of me on the road.
Yeah.
And it looked, and as I came closer to it, I had to slow down. I just couldn't do an emergency stop because I thought it's going to frighten it away. I just kind of braked slowly. As I came up to it, it leant forward to the side, and I could see every line on its forehead. And I looked into its dark eyes. It looked at me. I was looking directly at it, and it used its hand from the grass, pulled it aside, and straight into the field. And I haven't seen something move with speed like that. The speed it just moved. Like you see somebody run, you can see them starting to move, But the speed of it was like something like something you see in a movie. It just goes 1 minute it's there and it's like shot, like you see something going at hyper speed like in a movie. Just like
it just took off,
zooms off. Yeah. Your eyes see it 1 minute and then straight through the hedge.
Yeah.
And at that point, I just had to go. I'm shaking. I'm shaking throughout my body, and I just let go of the brake and just put my foot in the accelerator and go past. And there was a part of me that wanted to stop and look, but your fear runs through you as well. You're like.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you. You were afraid? You were afraid, I suppose. Obviously, coming across something like that, I'd imagine must be all sorts of emotions.
You have a part of fear, and there's a thing that goes. That's the thing I really think hard about. There's people out there. They go on the news or whatever you want to call it, Facebook and this or another, and they say they're trying to prove is there alien life. They're trying to prove is there something out there.
Well, it's the great wonder, isn't it? That's the question. Yeah.
Yes, but I'm sitting here in my house, in my car, or wherever I am. I know. It's out there. I've seen it. I've seen one. But
and does that change the way you think about the world and life and everything?
I'll tell you this. They tell you. They turn around and tell you that some people say that they're trying to keep it away from the public, that these things are real. Okay.
Yeah.
But from my experience, I think it's the best thing that's ever happened to me.
Okay.
Because growing up in life, and you have your beliefs, and you believe in what you believe in, and a lot of it's really good for people, We're glad to have it, and I'm glad to have what I had when I grew up. I'm so glad the way my parents brought me up. But as time's gone on in life, and I've seen what I've seen, I'm so glad to have seen that, because there's so many stories out there. And in some way, I hold it very close to me. The experience. It decided to show itself to me, but was it by chance? Did it show itself on purpose? I don't know. There's questions I ask myself to this day.
And do you feel that it may have been there? Do you feel it may have wanted you to see it?
There's a part of me that thinks that, because why did it have its back towards me? Was it testing me out to see will I try to knock it down? Was it some kind of a test in life? I don't know. It's hard to know. There was on that stretch of road. I've got one video up online. It's on that road. It shows you there's a wrath on the side of the field it went into, and then there's a bit on the other side of the road, as you could think that it walked from that side, on the right hand side. Then as I was driving down, there's a bit of a field being dug out. And it's still being dug out. So there's question marks over that too, whether it was there, looking at those sites,
So you're thinking that maybe you came across it as it was crossing the road or coming away from one field and into the other, and you just.
It could have been that, And
are you calling it an alien? Is that what you believe? Is that what you're?
The way I describe it, the way I describe it is like you see some people say, was it a reptilian? No,
Yeah.
it wasn't. It didn't have there was no scales. It was skin. I call it skin, like but it was the tail had like ridges on it, like the way you describe it, like a rat's tail.
Yeah.
That's the way I would describe it, like
the tail. Cause it is interesting because I suppose you often hear about people seeing. Would it fit the description kind of as a grey? You often hear people saying a grey, an alien, the grey.
Yes, you see like the head on a grey. That kind of a thing. Yes.
Yeah.
Pretty close to that. But the body was not.
No.
It was kind of the top part of the chest came out, but like we have a sternumy bit,
Yeah.
How can you describe a man's chest? If you're pretty fit, as I would say, fit, work out a bit.
So it's got like a defined definition, like a defined kind of pectoral muscle.
Yeah. But you wouldn't be able to see the middle part that comes in on this thing, this being creature, whatever it was, because it was totally rounded. Okay, I'm talking really rounded, right across, pretty flat the way, and then the middle part was the same, just came out a bit, like bulged out slightly, and the bottom part was the same kind of, bulged out a wee bit, but it was very, very narrow at the bottom. And then the feet look pretty normal, and the hands,
When you say look pretty normal, do you mean like as a human foot looks normal? Does it look like that?
Yeah, it wasn't far fetched. Maybe the toes in it was a bit longer, but I wasn't focusing too much on right on
How long did you see it for? How long was it there?
God, it was there for a good. Oh God, I'd say a good 8-10 seconds, because as I was coming around this stretch of road, as soon as I seen it, the brakes went on, and I was slowing right down, and just let the car trickle forward, and I looked up and down a good 5 times or more, as I was scanning it up and down, because that's the only thing you could do at the time. Because
of course.
If I'd gone in my pocket going, where's my phone?
It'd be gone.
I had to it's having to react to the situation, going, what am I going to do to get, to remember this, to see what it is.
Yeah.
Because after this, since this thing has happened now, I immediately then got a dash cam on the car. That's kind of recording all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, if this is gonna be again, I want to capture it.
Of course, yeah.
And there was another time, I will tell you this is totally true, on the road that runs beside that road, you could say, there's a main road that runs from Newry to Armagh.
Right.
Not far from the Tanyuki Road where that happened. I was driving up then towards Maghill one evening. This was after that had happened. And this car was driving in front of me. And the headlights on the car was, you could see, it was starting to get dark. And this thing jumped from my right as he was driving along across the road in front of the headlamp, the lights of the other car.
Yeah.
And the legs, I'm talking this thing, it looked something like, I say it's the same, but you can't be 100% certain, But as it was jumping across, it had its head turned as if it was looking, but it jumped across the road, huge leaps. It sprung across the road and away over, and over the gate into the field, away.
Wow. Okay. And do you think this is the same alien, or do you think it was something
I think
similar?
It was the same kind of a thing, But
okay.
But at the time, it's hard to, I tell people about these stories. I've told my mum and dad, my family, everybody knows about it,
Yeah.
It's just because of what it was, how it happened. If you'd have just seen something in the hedge, if you thought you'd seen a head of something in the hedge looking at you, you would have thought, oh, I'm seeing things, But this wasn't just a case of, oh, I think I've seen something. No, it happened. It was there in the middle of the road. That's all I can tell you is they are real.
Yeah.
There are people out there thinking, no, couldn't possibly be,
Yeah, well, that's what I suppose.
I wouldn't be talking about it today if it hadn't have happened. You know.
Well, you sound like a pretty normal guy, Arvon, and I suppose since starting to look at this podcast and do a bit of research online, I've come across much more reports and much more stories than I ever thought were out there, and a lot of them kind of even related here to Ireland and into the UK. So it's and I suppose when people think of alien stories, they think of, you know, an American guy talking about maybe being probed or something crazy like that. But it's when you're hearing someone like you who talks about a normal story and, you know, just talks about it in that way, it's pretty different. You don't sound like your average alien, I suppose, encounter.
You know, I can say one thing. Since that had happened, I remembered something that had happened way back when we were kids, parents talking about something, you know.
Yeah.
Just something happens to you now and you can remember back. And I've mentioned it before to somebody online, that we were driving down to my mum's, my auntie's house, sister's house in Wales, and we were driving down and coming around a corner. My mum and dad remembers. My mum remembers it exactly, and I can talk to my dad about it, and he goes, "Oh yes, that did happen." And this, whatever it was, they were coming around a corner, and you seen it going, you know, in the corner of the road.
Yeah.
And she says to this day, they didn't talk about it back then because it wasn't the thing to talk about, because people would have thought you were totally mad, you know. And they just decided to keep quiet about it. But there's quite a lot of things happened over the years, you know, even in Wales, you know. There's been sightings of this, that, or another, you know. And it does happen. There's been this sightings over here in Ireland, off the coast of Ireland.
I've since researching, I don't know if you've seen it, but there was a couple of airplane stories.
Yes,
they all spotted something on the same night, and the audio was online for that. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, I heard that on the radio on the way to work one morning. That report coming out, and I was like shocked, you know.
Yeah, and it had been reported to the aviation authority, but I've never heard. I actually sent an email to them to see if there was anything from it, but I didn't hear anything back.
Yeah, they will always try to say that it was a meteor or something.
Yeah, and did you report this to a government body? Did you go to the police about this, or what do you do about something like that?
About my encounter?
Yeah,
I sent off 2 emails. I can't exactly remember which. I'd looked up something online, and it was a government department to do with UFOs or something at the time. And I looked, and there was quite a few people within that department. And I sent an email off to that one, and I sent off another email to somewhere else, and no replies. So what I did at the time after that was talking to a few other people. They said to me to get in touch with somebody. So they told me there was a Facebook page to get in touch with the Northern Ireland UFO Society. So I met up with one of those guys and just told him the story, because when you've got something so big, you won't need to talk about it. If I felt better that it was, you know, that I told somebody the story.
The problem shared, the problem half, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I appeared on the Panic Room, BBC 2 Northern Ireland, doing an interview on to do with this.
Yes.
And there's clips online to do with it, but it's like people say, you know, what happened here, well, the whole thing, you know, and I'm going, yes, I will talk about it, because you know, even my parents these days, I talk about it, and they're all like, you know, yes, you know, they know I'm saying the truth, you know. You know,
yeah. What has been the reaction of kind of friends and stuff like that as well? Are they?
Yeah, well, at the very beginning they were like, you know, laughed a bit. But as time's gone on, and there's interviews online and different things, you know, I'm talking about it. They're going, well, this has happened then, you know, because why would he keep talking about it? You know?
And did you have any interest in aliens or anything like that before this had happened? Would you have been someone who'd been interested in what's happening in the skies above us, or?
See, growing up, I always had that kind of fear that there was something out there. Just knew there was something, because you seeing, you know, growing up, I was all like, you know, the kind of person who would be like, there's something here, you know, around the place.
Yeah.
But I'd never seen like I'd seen on the road that day. You know, like an ET. You know, I can tell you another thing. was out in the car one evening and had my daughter with me, and there was a, like you say, lights in the sky, you know.
Yeah.
There's the odd evening you can see the odd thing. That's all I can say. You know?
Okay. Well, I suppose I'm not actively looking for it, but I suppose since reading about it and getting more into it, the more and more I suppose you think about it, the size of the universe and the cosmos and everything, I've often said to myself, it would be silly to believe that we are alone, but I just had never seen anything for me to believe that they've been here. But
that's all I can tell you. That's all I can tell you is we're definitely not alone.
and you said that when you were growing up you had a fear of something and not being alone, and now that you know we are not alone, do you still have a fear? Do you think that these aliens or whatever they are might want to harm us, or what do you think what do you feel about that?
You hear about people, about things online, about people being, okay, there's been abductions, this or that. There's a good case of Travis Walton. He was a logger in, I guess, Pennsylvania, isn't it?
Yeah.
Years ago, and he was took away for a few days, came back, and his stories there was witnesses and this or that, and there are stories out there. You hear of people having implants and they've been found and they've been taken out and this or that. Do I have a fear? Since that happened, no. Before
you don't feel they're a threat to humanity?
No, maybe there are some, maybe possibly. You know, they say that there's different kinds out there. I don't know. But the way I think of it, you know, I've seen what I've seen before that. Before that, I had a lot of things that kind of kept me a bit, what would you say? Everybody has an anxiety. Everybody suffers some kind of anxieties in life. They worry about general things, you know. We worry about a lot of things, you know, the way life is made around us. And since that happened, I get up every day. Nothing worries me. I'm so glad to be getting up in the morning. That's the way I can describe it.
Okay. So it's had a positive effect on you?
A really positive one. I have no anxiety anymore. It's totally gone. The way I would say is, they fear that if humanity knew about this thing, it would cause mass panic. I think it would help people a lot. You know, it would get rid of their, you know, okay, I still believe in a lot of things, you know. It doesn't negate a lot of things I believe, you know.
Has anybody ever tried to silence you? Have you ever heard anybody ever hear you speaking about that? Any government officials or anything like that ever tried to stop you from talking about it? You've never been approached, or?
No. Since the way I would describe it now is, okay, maybe as it gets more public, would anybody try and silence it? No, I don't think they will, because there's that many stories out there now, and in America now, was it about a week ago, I'm not sure, but they've come out now, there's military personnel come out, and there's been a video released of an UFO footage from a fighter aircraft, isn't it? You know, flying in front of it.
Yeah.
So there are files, cases being released slowly to say, yes, there are craft out there. Then you've got the other case of the Nimitz encounter. There was an aircraft carrier out in, was it off the coast of Mexico? I'm not sure. That they witnessed, you know, these Tic Tacs, as they call them, flying. So there are people coming forward saying, okay, these things have happened. Whether they've happened a week ago, a month ago, they probably, you know, they're coming forward with these stories like 10, 20 years, maybe, you know, after the events happened.
Yeah. So would you believe that all the governments would be aware of this and that they're just stopping it from becoming public knowledge? Would that be how you feel about this, or do you think?
Well, this story is going around the web a bit. You know, it is. Whether I think they refuse to talk to me about it because they don't want it to go public. You know, they don't want it to go further on. But it is going out there. You know, it will. People will talk about these things. You know.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's of huge interest, and it's the thing, I suppose. Since I've been a child, you kind of wonder what's on up in the skies, what's happening, and then I suppose through movies and television, you kind of it piques your interest, and I suppose then with the internet, you start to hear stories from all over the world, and it's such an unknown for me to kind of. I like the wonder of it, but for someone like you who's had an encounter, it must be refreshing, I suppose, to know that we are not alone, and that I don't know. It must be a strange feeling to know that too, though. No.
Yeah. Some people say, how do you sleep at night? Do you fear going out of the house, in case this thing turns up? I don't know. What I could say is, it doesn't want to. They tell me, how can you say this? But I feel that it doesn't want to do me harm.
Okay.
It didn't want to do me harm that day.
And would you be fearful to see it again now? Would you be fearful?
No. Believe it or not, if the same thing appeared again, I would walk up to it. Now that's something. How can you say that? How can I say that?
But I suppose it must be something you've thought about a lot. So.
No, because I would, because I've come that close to it. I would. It's like opening your, I would walk up to it to see, to try and interact,
and extend your hand and shake its hand, or.
It might not be the best thing to do, but
I suppose, but to show peace and try and communicate with it or something like that. Yeah, it's
But, I'm glad it happened in that kind of way, because it changed. I find it a positive for me.
And have you heard any experiences that are very similar to yours? Because for me, when I've been doing research, I haven't heard many stories of these aliens with tails. Have you ever come across, or have you ever spoken to anybody else who may have seen something that in the same way you have seen?
No, and I've never heard of anybody saying that they've come across one like that in Ireland, face to face, coming so close to it.
Yeah.
To me, some people say
you've 100% seen it once, and you believe you've seen it more than that.
Yes.
Why do you think you've seen it and other people haven't?
I don't know. Is it pure luck? Is it wanting to show itself? Are some people able to see things? Some people say there's there's a possibility that some people can see them.
Yeah.
Because I've spoken to a couple of people, contact with people all over the world at the minute, that they say, the odd person that says that they can see different things.
Okay.
You hear of experiences,
Yeah, well, it's a hell of an experience, and you've also you spoke to the Northern Ireland UFO Society, and then what happened then? So you kind of did you?
Oh yes. Well, when I was with them as a part of that group, the BBC Northern Ireland, when I was at the Awakening conference last year in Manchester, I went over to it, and the BBC were there, and they heard the story I had, and they decided then they would come out on a night watch.
I actually contacted the NI Society, UFO Society, and they had said to me that they're doing a night watch in August, and I was thinking about going along to it. I was just wondering what happens on a night watch. What happens there?
Just basically, if you've got a good night vision, binoculars, like a Sky Master, binoculars would be a good set of binoculars. Wouldn't set you back too much,
Yeah.
Just take a pair, if you've possibly a camera, if something that's good for low light. It's just basically standing out on it could be on a mountain somewhere, and a good clear night, and just with a group of people, and just keeping a look at the skies if you see anything.
Eyes to the skies.
Yeah, just trying to get a bit of evidence. But I used to be a part of that group, but then left that group and decided lately now I've started my own group called Ireland UFO Investigation Society.
Okay.
So it's an Irish, just to cover the whole of Ireland, to report on any sightings, which I've started to put onto the site. If anybody comes to me with any story, with any photographic evidence, it doesn't matter how. It's hard to get a picture of something in the sky, really, because cameras these days, if you've got a camera phone, it's difficult to get. You'll get a bright spark of light, and it's just a case of capturing it. And I've said to people, if you do capture something, get your camera phone out. Yes, try and take a picture, try and take a video. It doesn't matter how clear it is. We can get an idea of what you've seen, you know.
Yeah, and have you had people contact you?
Yes, there's a few stories going up, and there's a few more going up, and it's just a case of, I tell people, get onto the website that I have, and submit your stories if you have something, so we can get it out there for people to read, to see what's going on about the place,
Yeah, fantastic. And do you want to give us that? Do you want to give us the name of your website there one more time?
It'll just be www.IrelandUFOInvestigationsSociety.org.
That's fantastic, and we'll put that up on our social media and stuff like that. If anybody has anything,
it's a long one.
It is a long one. Yeah, but I suppose it's. I suppose if you just Google it, you probably should get it pretty handy too.
Oh yeah,
that's fantastic, Arf, and thank you so much for sharing your experience with me. It's been really nice to speak to you today.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Okay, so we've just been listening to my interview with Arfon Jones, who's a Welsh man who was...
Cool name.
It is a very cool name. I wanted to ask him about his name, but there was so much more to talk about that we didn't get a chance to ask about his name. But I think Jones is a pretty popular Welsh name, and I think Arfon is as well.
But so he had a face-to-face encounter with an extraterrestrial.
Yeah, he looked it in the eye.
Yeah. I know, as mad as a tail, I thought.
Yeah, the tail thing was strange, but I suppose, but
isn't there a drawing as well?
There is. Actually, since speaking to him yesterday, I've had a little look online that he did speak to someone else, and they did like a YouTube video, and but he's drawn a drawing there, so I will ask him if I can if I can take the snapshot of that drawing and put it up.
Yeah, so you can check out our social media.
Yeah, hopefully so that's a drawing that he did. Yeah, but what do you think?
No, I thought it was interesting. Like I believe he believes that he saw it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh, 100%. I don't think that. He sounds genuine, doesn't he?
Yeah. But then, and he does sound kind of anxious-y a bit. I kind of sense that a bit in his voice. He seems to be a bit kind of worried. Maybe it's about talking to yourself, or
I suppose.
Intimidated.
Well, I suppose it's because if you've got a story like that, it's like he's saying, are people going to believe you or not, or what's this guy's agenda, or what's he at? And I just suppose that's the thing. I'm just interested to hear what these people have to say and what's going on, and.
I always think of, as you said to him there, the universe is so vast and all of that.
It gets ridiculously big.
Yeah, it's massive. I definitely believe that there is life on other planets, but it could be like a species of caterpillar. Do you know what I mean? That's what I think, not necessarily intelligent.
Yeah, a lot of people do say something about an octopus, that they reckon that's not from this world. But that's, I don't know.
A planet of octopus?
Well, no, but the octopus itself is quite an alien creature, yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, because it's quite alien. But you see, the whole thing is, right, so the universe is massive, right? But the only thing is we know, outside the clouds, we don't really know. We can see planes, but after that, we don't know what's going on up there.
Yeah.
We only know from what people tell us.
Yeah.
Right? So some people like Arfon will tell us they saw something, and then some people go, that's bullshit, right? Yeah. I don't believe it. Yeah. But then if a guy comes on the telly, Stephen Hawking, and says there's a big black hole out there in the middle of nowhere, but there's no chance you can't see it, we go, but we believe him.
Yeah.
And there's they tell us about these planets in other galaxies and all these sorts of stuff, and we just go, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I quite like that. I'm a bit dismissive of religion and stories like that, because I'm probably an atheist, I suppose, and I don't really believe that kind of. That's personally me.
Yeah.
But I'm happy enough to believe Neil deGrasse Tyson or one of these other guys who comes on and tells me about the planets. So I suppose it's not fair to dismiss one and then to believe the other, really. So I'm trying to keep an open mind, and I don't believe that man is going around with an agenda to try and lie about it. I believe he definitely saw something that day.
Yeah.
But whether
it was an hallucination or something,
God no, who knows what it is? But then he said he's seen it again, jumping across the road. It is a strange one. I know it's a strange one if you said to someone, because it's a story you don't want to hear, especially in Ireland. Some guy driving around a country road, and then there's an alien just walking across the road.
I wasn't clear. Was it day or night?
It was not daytime. Daylight. Broad daylight. On a weekend in May 2016, he's driving around this small country road.
Around the corner,
and they're not face to face. It had its back to him.
Yeah.
Was a 6 foot tall alien
with a tail. And
then it turned around, looked at him.
We have tailbones.
We
never had tails.
Well, something going back. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and then it just basically turned and ran into a field and was gone.
Yeah, but he said he wasn't freaked out by it either. He's
not freaked out.
If he saw it again, he would approach it.
Yeah.
Maybe he just felt a bit like ignorant driving off in it or something.
I don't know. I suppose at the time it's like it's like when we spoke on our past podcast about the guy with the Bigfoot thing. In the moment of fear, what do you do?
I don't think. I suppose it's easy for people to say, "Why didn't you get out your phone and take a picture?" But people aren't always going to think in that moment.
If it was a 15-year-old teenager, they'd have taken a snapshot.
Oh, definitely.
Snapchat.
They'd be on their Snapchat story.
Yeah. It'd be a good story to watch.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. I'm still skeptical because. And I suppose there is things like TV portrays it in a certain way, like movies as aliens being, and like maybe there is intelligent life out there, and they're not bad. Maybe they're watching us. There's theories that we are put here by aliens as an experiment.
There's a lot of theories.
That they made the pyramids. I think that's an interesting one.
But why? Because we wouldn't have been able to make them?
They reckon back then, how did they construct the pyramids? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's such a... And how they're... Now, I can't get into the facts of it, but how they're aligned with the stars and astronomy.
But isn't there a thing that predates the pyramids here in Ireland? Newgrange.
Yeah.
And that lights up like on this winter and summer solstice.
Yeah, they're way more into astrology back then.
Yeah. I don't know. Look,
the truth is out there.
That's the truth is we don't know.
Yeah.
But someone who claims to know is my next guest.
Okay.
My next guest is Cameron Bowers.
And you did chat with him.
I did chat with him. And Cameron is a man from Montana. And Cameron runs his own podcast called My Alien Life.
Okay.
And Cameron has had over 20 encounters with aliens
in his lifetime.
Yeah, since a young age. And he also has a forum on his website where he speaks to other people about experiences that they've had.
Okay.
So we're going to go and talk to Cameron now.
Okay, let's have a listen.
So I'm joined here now with Cameron Bowers. Cameron has had over 20 different contacts with the third kind. Cam, thanks for speaking with me.
Thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here, and it's nice that we can talk all the way across the world like this.
Cam, you're joining me from Montana.
Yeah, I'm in the northern Rocky Mountains in Montana, up near Canada in the northwest portion of the state, and nice hot day here today.
Good stuff. I've noticed just by doing a little bit of research that Montana has the second highest UFO reportings in the world, in the United States. Would that be something that you'd be kind of agree with? Would you see a lot of activity in the skies in Montana?
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. I would also even actually say that we probably have the most activity in the world. We just don't have a population. We have one of the biggest states in the United States, but only 1 million, barely 1 million people, 1 million persons in the state. So obviously we're not scattered around everywhere, and there's not millions and millions looking at the sky at any given time. But if for example, you were right now in a place where I grew up, which is wide open expanses of the prairie, big, huge open skies, it's pretty much a guarantee.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think Montana is such a hotspot?
I think it has to do with being so wide open. I think perhaps that mountains are actually, there's a lot of different things with the mountains. With the mountains, you have tremendous air currents. You have different things that aren't advantageous for aircraft. So these Rocky Mountains that I live amongst are very rugged, very, very hard to navigate. So there's a lot of people that live in the mountains, and I just think if there's somebody that came from millions of light years or billions of miles away, they're a lot easier to access out on the open prairies of the United States.
Very good. Okay. Well, Cam, I know that you've had your own personal experiences over the years, and you refer to these aliens or creatures as IMOs. Is that right?
I did, and the reason why, and that stands for Intelligent Mobile Organisms. A lot of times in the past, I wouldn't agree with the concept of alien because, number one, there's really no proof that they are alien. There's no proof that they came from outside of this world or outside of this galaxy or solar system, wherever. And there's a lot of indication sometimes that they may be from Earth. And there's a lot of schools of thought that lean in that direction. So rather than basically pick alien, because that sort of has the connotation of that being unearthly, I wanted to remain slightly neutral, number one, because I thought that might be more correct, and number two, I've never really been comfortable with that word alien. I definitely aren't comfortable with the concept of aliens, or if they are actually aliens, that term and the actual alien itself. You know, I've had some negative experiences, so I don't really like to go there. But I'm getting over that hump, and I use both terms now.
And since you've come out, and Cam, you have your podcast, which is how I discovered you, My Alien Life. And since you started doing your podcast, have you come across kind of people who've had experiences maybe similar to yourself, or people who've had other experiences with otherworldly beings? Has that really opened up your eyes and kind of made you feel a bit more comfortable about the experiences that you've had?
Yeah, absolutely. And excuse me, one of the reasons why is because, you know, you hear so many accounts and so many different types of accounts. Some are very similar, some are very different. There's people that have had thousands of accounts with thousands of different types of species. So it's all very, very different. And I suppose you get to the point where you're actually desensitized, and that's a natural thing. And that's kind of the direction that I was hoping to go, you know, with my own exposure to different people that have had these different experiences. So, you know, it seems likely that the more I hear about these different experiences, the better I can actually understand my own. And I've absolutely been understanding my own.
And I suppose now that we're getting into this a little bit, would you be comfortable with sharing maybe some of your experiences? Maybe, well, your first contact, or what you think would be the first time that you may have experienced one of these contacts?
Sure, and that's on my podcast, and you can listen to that anytime. But when I was a kid, about 5 years old, I had my tonsils taken out, and I've told this to a lot of people too, and it's just a really odd thing that happened. I actually had my tonsils taken out as a child. My brother and I was about 5 and my brother was about 12, and we both had that happen at the same time, which was seems odd to a lot of people, but back in the day, we had the local doctor who took everybody's tonsils out. And he decided that it would be good for my brother and I to go in at the same time, which we did. So I have two very, very vivid images and memories of what happened. And those memories are distorted, of course, now that I'm adult. But I remember the basic premise. One was, you know, the images of my parents not dropping me off, but bringing my brother and I to the hospital. And we were getting prepared for surgery, and we're going into surgery, and I remember my parents down at the end of a hallway, and they kind of were hanging out. And the other memory I have is running, and I remember running down. It wasn't a hallway, but it was you know, there was a cold floor, a cold damp floor. It was very foggy. All of a sudden, there was sort of a rift or a split in the fog, and this what I would say at the time when I was a kid, thinking it was a person that stepped out, but literally they put their hand on the base of my back, on the lower back, and I was levitated off the ground, and this person just guided me through this fog. And you know, that's a very, very unusual memory, but to me, those two memories basically are side by side in my mind. That's hard to explain, that feeling, but it's the same memory essentially, except somewhere in my mind bifurcates those, and you know, it's so difficult to explain, but it's a memory that is within a memory, and there are two things together. And there were some other occurrences there too, but you know, those are the real vivid parts. that I have, and I remember not wanting to look at this person or thing that was, causing me to float through this fog, because I was actually afraid of what I would see. So at that little point in that memory, I also have a feeling that comes with that I had seen this thing before, and that's really why I didn't want to look at it.
Okay, that sounds. Is this a scary memory for you?
Yeah, that's a scary memory. So there's, I have a couple really, really frightening memories. But yeah, as a kid, there was a lot of things that happened. For example, another thing that would happen is that, I would walk out onto the prairie that I grew up on alone a lot. I had one best friend, and we hung out a lot, but there were times then, that I would be alone, and I would always go out there. And there was things out there that frightened me, but I would go out there anyway. And it didn't matter what happened to me when I was out there. There was always this draw, as soon as I'd get up in the morning, even if I had nobody to play with, I had to go out there. Now, keep in mind, I'm just, walking around to the backside of my house and maybe going north about a half mile most of the time. And there's plenty of places where I couldn't see my house, but, many of those times that I had gone out there, I had experienced gaps in time. One in particular, I was like, it's 11 or 12 years old, somewhere around there, and went out in the morning, sometime before 10 o'clock, and I knew that I was going to have a birthday party that afternoon, so that early afternoon. So I walked out there by myself, and, I didn't think I was out there for a very, very long time, but I do remember noticing that all of a sudden everything looked different. The world looked different, and, it looked different because it was later. It was later in the day. The sun was in a different place. Everything looked different. So I had this feeling that, I needed to get home right away because I felt it was later, but it was totally confusing. I couldn't figure out why this was happening and what was going on. So I rushed home, and again, that was the day of my birthday party. And when I got home, my mother had been looking for me, and she had said she had called for me many times, and I could always hear her because I was, there's absolutely nothing to deaden sound, and I could hear my parents yell from a long ways away, but I didn't hear my parents. I did walk in the door. Party was going on. So I would guess that, that gap of time could have been anywhere from about, at the most 6 hours, and or less. It's probably less than 6 hours, because I probably could have been out there by myself for a while before whatever happened to cause this rift in time. But certainly there was that rift of time, and even if it would have been an hour or two, when I did finally realize what was happening, the sun had changed, the shadowing on the earth had changed, so I knew I had to get home. Pardon?
Where do you think you went in those 6 hours? What do you think happened?
That I don't know. I've had those occurrences a few times, and there was nothing physical that happened to me that I could identify. There was nothing different about me other than, I felt all of a sudden confused and disoriented just because of the noticeable clues on the earth that everything had changed, So I don't know where I went. I'm assuming that maybe, I was taken and brought aboard something that literally took me away from that area, or at least concealed me at that area for a while. And who knows? It could have been alien.
And why is it that you feel that it was an abduction, or that you may have gone somewhere? Is there any indication, or have you ever had a flashback or any sort of?
No flashbacks, and those rifts in time, were pretty much consistent. They all had the same MO. They all followed the same pattern. However, I did have experiences where, I actually was all of a sudden inside of a room or a craft or something, and I was apart from the physical Earth. I mean, I was somewhere else. It was very apparent in feeling that I was not part of the Earth anymore, or part of the actual Earth that was near me. And there's that different feeling. So I think in these rifts of time, the time gaps, there wasn't that feeling. I didn't come away with that feeling. So I don't really know what happened. I do know that that area that I grew up in is very different from any place that I'd ever been. You can actually go out there, and I have a podcast where I talk about this hum. A couple of friends of mine are running from this, or me and another friend are running from this very, very loud hum. And that's in the same area. And keep in mind that this is probably an area that's about 7 by 8 to 10 miles, and not a very big area at all. And just about any point out there, you can see the boundaries that I'm talking about. To the south, there's a small town that was near me. To the west, there's a highway. To the east, there's some bluffs with some hills. And then to the north, there's a bluff that's maybe 400 feet high, and it's basically a cliff that runs about 24 miles. And it's a very, very, very prominent feature out on the landscape that provides a boundary to this existence of some sort of a plane on the Earth that's very, very different than anywhere else.
And can you talk to me a little bit about, you mentioned being inside of a craft. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Sure. So I had a group of friends that I always hung out with, one in particular that I was always with, even through high school. And being that we grew up in such a flat area, featureless at times, and it was fairly safe for us to drive. So most of us drove at a really early age, and it was really nothing for us to drive, in the middle of the night, like coming home from some sort of activity at school, or coming, home from something else, going to a drive-in movie. So one night I was with a group of friends, and there was actually a bunch of us, but two of them got in my car, and we were driving on this gravel road, and I crossed this cattle guard, which is basically some metal slats across the road to keep cattle from crossing that part of the road. So I got a flat tire, which was not unusual. Didn't bother me in the least. I had an old clunker car. I always had two full-size spares in the back, and they were just basically extra tires. So, we jumped out, and we're going to, it's in the middle of the night. We hardly have any light, and we have a flashlight that doesn't work very well, but the three of us are going to change this tire. So these guys had been with me, and they'd done this before, so it was like nothing. So we got out, and we jacked up this car, and took the tire off, put the other one on, and we were sort of in the phase there of cleaning up and putting everything away. And all of a sudden, the only thing that I could describe would be that I felt numb. And not so much numb as the nerve endings in my body, but just almost like I didn't have any nerves. And my mind was numb, and really nothing was, there was no emotion. Normally, I was with these guys, and we had such a good time. We were very happy. I mean, that feeling went away. So there was no happiness. There was no sadness. Totally emotionless. And we were kind of standing in a triangle and looking at each other, because we had kind of just stopped to reflect a little bit, and we're kind of looking around at the sky and looking at each other and laughing and talking. And there was a little bit of light, not much, but it's very, very, very dark. And I think that the door was open on the car, so there was a little bit of dome light, which really was very little for the size of the car that I had. But this numbness came over us, and we kind of were just frozen in our tracks, looking at each other. I had a feeling of what was going to happen. I had not a premonition, but I knew that something was going to happen related to my other experiences. And basically there was a whoosh, and we weren't sucked up or down or back or forth. All of a sudden, something just encapsulated us, and it came from kind of the southwest where we were standing. And it was like it actually. I had this. There was no reason for me to have this feeling, but there was some sort of feeling that I've never experienced before. Was something came from the southwest, and it just encapsulated us. And so we're standing there in the same positions, and we're in a room. I mean, it's obvious that this room is kind of got, it's greenish brown in there, and all the walls are curved. To my left and to my right, there are openings, and they're curved openings. So it's like I'm on the edge of this curve, maybe on the outside of some circular object, inside it rather, but on the outside, inside edge, very edge of it, and it curves around, and there's an opening on each side. But we're in this room, and the room that's open in front of me is curved as well. And on the wall is curved, and it kind of has a little hump about 3 feet off the floor, which is kind of curved from the floor to the wall, and it went up in sort of just a flowing motion. So my friends kind of stepped back from me, turned around, and I looked to my right, and there's this gray, which I had seen before, and over 6 feet tall. And then when I looked back, there were 2 small grays with my friends, one with each friend. And at this point, my friends are facing me. The little smaller grays have their back to me. And I'm very aware of what's going on. I know only because, not that I'm asking questions, I'm wondering. At that point, I can wonder things, I can think. I can't really move, but if I could think about anything I wanted, my mind was just totally free. So I was kind of like thinking what was going on. And there's no verbal answer, but all of a sudden I just know. I just know what's going on. It's hard to explain, but I absolutely know that these 2 little guys, and I always call them guys, are showing my friend objects, like a football, like a frisbee, like ordinary objects, like a toothbrush. And I don't think they actually have these objects in their hands, but they're able to manipulate something or somehow to where my friends will actually see these objects without these objects being present. And so I did wonder why that was happening. And the answer basically came to me in the same way. I just knew, and it was that they really did not get why we spend so much of our free time with these objects. So at that moment, I had this overwhelming feeling that, these guys, they're all business. Their whole objective is
Can you
is
describe
survival.
them to me? Can you describe what you were looking for? Can you describe when you look at these?
Typical small grays like you see with the big head, the big eyes. The taller one that's to my right, whatever is about 6 foot, maybe a little over. And I'd seen him before, maybe I think it was about 2 to 3 years earlier in my bedroom. And, shriveled face, small mouth, smaller eyes though, almond shaped eyes, quite a bit smaller. The head is narrower. It's actually very narrow. And the mouth, if I looked over, and I'm just looking over out of the corner of my eye, I don't want to make direct eye contact. I don't want to move because my fear, and it's been that fear several times, is I'm afraid of what it's going to do if it catches me looking at it, and I don't want to look at it. So I didn't want to provoke anything is basically what's happening. But these were typical grays. The guy on my right, I had seen before, but I haven't really seen any artist renditions that are perfect on that one. I've seen some things that are very close, but there's people that have made pictures of taller grays, and this guy looked, exactly like that. So
And
what
do
I
you
was going to say.
get a
Go
feeling
ahead.
like he might have been the guy in charge, or
No, I don't. And being that I had been in its presence, more than once, to me, it always made me wonder what my role was, why I was even there in the first place. It was just really unusual because I didn't do anything. They didn't interact with me. I just stood there and I just watched the whole thing go down. And this thing stood beside me. And, I feel that somehow I probably was attached to it in some way, but meaning that, there was some, it had a purpose with me. I don't even know what that was. And to me, I feel like this thing was old, and it didn't probably communicate or interact the way it should, or maybe it would have 1,000,000 years ago or 1,000 or 20 years ago. It was just different and it could have been different from the other ones just because of, there's different species or whatever. I just did never think that or ever wonder that if it was a different species. So I don't know if it was or not, but I feel that possibly it didn't really have the ability that these two smaller ones that seemed younger almost, and I can't even explain that, but they certainly could have been younger. Didn't have the same power or capability over me as the little ones did with my other two friends. However, I might say, I do have a lot of clues that my mind works a bit different than other people's. It was seriously combative. I was surprised at the things that I was thinking because of this fear, and it seemed to disorient this thing, especially years earlier when I had seen it in my house. My fear had just disoriented it, and it was frozen. I mean, we were both frozen, looking at each other. But that's a whole other story. But I think that
your podcast about how you felt your childhood bedroom may have been like a portal for these creatures.
Yeah,
so.
I do. There's this weird room there, and inside the room, it's we used it as a root cellar in the basement, but it has these rocks in there, and there were these white rocks, and for the life of me, I've never seen those anywhere near where I grew up. It's not a rock from that area, and all the geology there is fairly consistent for at least 100 miles around, or at least 80 miles until you hit the Rocky Mountains. And these weren't rocks from the Rocky Mountains. I mean, they weren't impressive in any way. They were just kind of dirty white, but they were totally different. And that house was, at that time, in about I guess my parents bought that in about 1968. That house was, old then. So those things had been hauled from somewhere or found and added to the structure there, and just really, really unusual. And I guess why I thought Portal 2 was the fact that here's this creature that I woke up at about 3:33 in the morning and looked, and there it is in my room. How did it get there? How did it get out? There had to be some entrance that I didn't know about, or some other way. So maybe it's an extra dimensional type of a being that's able to use a dimensional corridor to access where we are now. But I don't know.
Have they ever spoken to you?
Never. And that was the one thing that if I was ever wondering anything, where they're from, wondering where they're from, and I just knew they're from outer space. These guys were from outer space. They evolved in space. They came from space, and they're in space, and they're up above. They're up there all the time. As kids, we used to lay and look at the night sky on the prairie and watch these little lights, tiny little lights that look like satellites, make these strange and crazy maneuvers, and it was quite common to see that. Maybe if we would sleep outside, you might see it 2 times maybe we may not see it every night, but we'd see it, but they're up there. And I know as humans being terrestrial, we have a hard time believing that something could just exist in space and evolve in space. But, this is something that we don't have a clue about, that we don't know about. And it's hard to imagine that. But, in order to analyze this and different scenarios like this, we have to think differently.
What do you think they want? Or do you think they want to harm us? Or what do you think?
I don't know. And that's a good question because, I really, I actually think that I thought that question. I thought, what do you want with me? And I don't think I ever got the answer.
Yeah.
So
just can we go back to just for a second? So you're in the craft with your friends. What happens then? Do you just get transported back to where you guys were, or how does?
Yeah. So this is just odd, but so these little guys are interacting with my friends, and they're just kind of like staring. They're not reacting in any way, shape, or form. And I'm just standing there, and I'm looking at the one to my right, just kind of out of the corner of my eye. I'm wondering how long this is going to go on, or how long that we've been there. And I just had this. I didn't really get any acknowledgement of that, other than just, we're going to get out of there, and I know that this is going to end. I know that it's going to end well. I know that we're not going to have any problems. Yet, once I got in there and had, that feeling of numbness went away. There was some emotion. My heart was pounding, and I'm really, really fixated on the one to my right, and I'm looking, trying to basically size him up and figure out what's going on. Why it really made me comfortable that he's not moving or any interacting, in any way with anything whatsoever. And that made me uncomfortable because I'm just, didn't want to provoke it, didn't want to look too hard. I didn't want to think too much. I was trying to clear my mind, trying to get my heart rate to go down because it was so intense, and it was such an intense experience. It felt like I could almost pass out. And then the numbness came back a couple of times. I would get numb, and then I would be afraid again. So I wasn't really sure what was happening there. I preferred the numbness, and I was hoping that would come back. And then the little guys kind of just backed up, and then there was this whoosh, and we're just standing there looking at each other exactly like we had been. It's later, it's almost like 3:00 or something like that. And, it's time we need to get out of there and go home. And these guys just kind of looked at me and it was like, what are you looking at? Look. And so I said, we better go. We got in the car, never spoke of it, never talked about it. They hadn't a clue. They didn't know a thing had ever happened. I mean, I feel right at that time. Go ahead.
They were unaware of the whole event. They don't remember. They don't have a recollection of it. So you were able to see it happen. Okay. Wow.
So we've never talked about it. And okay. One of my friends who lives within 2-hour drive, I have pondered having him on the show. He doesn't even know I'm doing a podcast. So I think it would be something to have him on there and tell him this story. I know there's a lot of people that wouldn't agree with that. They would think that that's unfair. But honestly, if you're going to tell somebody, you're going to tell them. It doesn't matter if you're recording it. And I think there's probably a lot of reasons why something like that should be recorded. So, I'm kicking it around, Rob.
Do you think that, like, if your friends have no recollection of that happening, then there's a good chance that hundreds of thousands of people have had that happen to them and just don't have any recollection of it?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that the fact that they're up there, and people have asked me, well, what are they doing up there? Are they got to be doing something? They got to be coming down to interact with us or whatever, or they're going to, get us or, take over the world. You know, I mean, that's us thinking. You know, that's human thinking. That's what humans do. You know, I don't know what these things do. I have no reason to believe they would do anything. They're space people. They're creatures of outer space, and I don't really think that they could manage well here. I think when they do come down here, there's some sort of mechanism that keeps them safe from, you know, our toxic world and gravity and all the things that we have evolved over millions of years to be able to tolerate. I mean, I guarantee you there's probably not many things here that they could tolerate. So, you know, they're up there, and their livelihood's different. Again, what I gathered while I was aboard there was the fact that, you know, their whole mission is survival and fecundity of the species, and they don't, you know, they're not up there to have fun. I mean, if they come down in a little ship, it's for business only. And, you know, they don't have footballs and they don't have toothbrushes. And so they're wondering, you know, why we spend so much of our time doing all these extracurricular things when we could be, you know, saving each other, and, you know, we don't do that. So
they must be amazed.
They're all about the livelihood of the next generation, I think.
Would you think they're amazed by how long we spend staring at our mobile phones?
That's got to be crazy. I also tell people, you know, they're up there looking at us, and we have herds of these huge, potentially dangerous animals, and we're killing millions and millions of them every day, and we're eating them. I mean, my God, that's got to be frightening to look at us just you know, bashing the skulls in of cattle and eating these huge animals that are so much bigger than us. We must be powerful.
Have you ever reported this to any police or any government body or anything like that? Have you ever? No. And have you ever been approached by a government body to keep quiet about these type of things?
Not at all. And that's you know, the whole podcast, you know, basically was about talking about it. And, so that originally was my goal, you know, and years ago I'd been in radio, and you know, I wanted to come out with something that people could listen to. You know, I didn't want it to sound like hugely commercial. You know, I wanted it to sound like what we're doing right now.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
I wanted people to be able, you know, people to be able to listen, and I didn't want any commercials, and I didn't want any interruptions. I wanted to set the mood a little bit, but otherwise I wanted it to be very raw and very real for everybody, listeners and people who participate with me on the show.
Yeah, I've come across your podcast. Your podcast is called My Alien Life, and you have a range of very interesting guests on your show. Do you want to just talk to us a little bit about your podcast?
Yeah, so it's My Alien Life, and it's available everywhere on the internet, and it's also on YouTube, of course, but anywhere you can listen to podcasts. I do have a website. It's www.myalienlifepodcast.com. That'll take you everywhere to my email address or anywhere. But so, you know, originally I kind of didn't really have a plan to have guests, and it was going to be my own account, and I was going to let the show evolve and just see where it took me. So what you see right now, or hear right now rather, is where it took me. And my guests are amazing, and I always say my show is about the people behind the experience, meaning, yeah, there's an experience, and they had some experiences. However, I mean, these people are amazing, and they're individuals, and the show is about them, you know, their entire life, not just what happened to them or what people tuned in just to listen to that part, but incredibly, you know, they have lives, and they've had incredible things that have happened, and they live these lives, you know, knowing that there's more to this earth and life than we could possibly imagine. And, you know, we'll probably never know the full extent in our lifetime, or even come close to that in 10 lifetimes. But, you know, this is the voice of what has happened, and that's really the best we can do right now.
Okay, fantastic. And Cam, before you go, I just wanted to ask you, I've spoken to another guest who's appearing on the same episode as you, who's had an encounter here in Ireland, and they were driving along the road, and they turned a corner, and they just saw a being standing there in front of them that fitted the description of a grey, but the grey had a tail. And for me, that was a strange one. Have you come across any reports of aliens that are creatures that have a tail?
I haven't heard of anything that had a tail, but one of the things that I do too is that when I actually record a podcast of my own account, I don't tell the whole story. I don't give very, very vivid descriptions, and I've apologized because I want people to relate to that and call me or text me or email me and tell me their story. And I want to find common ground there. I had a gentleman one day that called and or texted me rather, and he was just blown away by what I had said because that experience that I just told you about, that happened to him the same way. He was describing the same room. So keep in mind, I never described that to anybody. And he threw some things at me that I think only between the two of us or, anybody that was around us that I would know. And we kind of bounced things back and forth and kind of tried things back and forth because, it all sounds a little bit crazy and unless you have somebody to quantify and verify exactly what happened there, and it's really hard to relate to anybody else that hasn't had this experience, and hard to tell anybody about it. But as soon as this person that you've just met tells you about something that they saw, which is exactly parallels your own account, that's the magic right there, and that something unworldly is happening.
Okay. Well, just before I go, one last question: if they did ask you to come on board with them and go with them, would you go?
No, I wouldn't voluntarily go. No way.
No. Okay.
I truly believe that they're not of this earth and they couldn't survive here. And I know that's why they're, I got to say that this planet is a very peaceful place just by where we are. There's not a lot happening. There's not a lot of objects in space near the planet that causes a danger. So, I think they found a place, where they hang out, and they're here on purpose. And I think they've been here a lot longer than we have, but that's just what they do. That's where they are. Now, does that account for all the species in the universe? I have no idea. I only know about this one, but they're there, man. They're right up there, and I could take anybody in the world with me into that part of the country, and they could see, at least some sort of glimpse or some sort of evidence of something happening there that we have no idea what that is, because not many people have seen it. There's people, that I grew up with that I got to say that, I know there's more interaction than I know of because, there has to be. I mean, I'm not just the only one that this has happened to, or me and a couple of friends, because, we're to the point, even myself, where you're so desensitized and you've grown up that way, and you know that these things are happening, that it just becomes sort of a way of life. And maybe in the future it becomes more of a way of life. People can accept it, and maybe that will be the time that we interact.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me today, Cam. And anybody that wants to follow you or hear any more about your story, they can go and check it out on My Alien Life podcast, which is available across all the platforms. Thank you very much for talking to me today, Cam.
Thank you very much, Rob, for having me.
So that was me talking to Cam, or Cameron Browers, as he likes to be known, or he likes to be known as Cam, sorry. Anyway,
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So look, guys, basically we want to hear from you, your alien stories. Obviously Cam there is an American guy, but we heard an Irish one, and I'd like to hear some of your Irish alien stories, because we'd like to do an Aliens Part 2, not the film, but the actual Aliens.
That was a movie, yeah.
Was there a 3?
There's loads of them, Alien versus.
Well, anyway, we'll do a Robin Rat's World of Wonder podcast, Aliens Part 2 in the future. But we'd like to maybe.
Because there's a lot.
There's a lot. There's a man that I'm trying to get in contact down in Cork as well, who's actually had an encounter too. And basically, in August, I'm looking at doing the watch night with the Northern Ireland UFO Society. So I'd like to try and get up there and do that. and
You might see something and get video.
that is the plan. See if I can get something, get it up. I maybe even go Facebook Live up there and do a bit of a thing, and interview and get to know the society and see what the happening story up there is. So that's coming down the pipeline.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And like Rob said, if you've any encounters, if you've had any similarities to any of the stories we've heard from the guys, contact Rob and Rat's Wow Podcast on Facebook. Send us a message, send us an email, and look, we'll look into it. We'll get
if you have any pictures, any videos of any UFOs that you spotted, you've seen,
send them on. We'll have you on the show.
Yeah. And how did they get in contact with us?
They could do it on the Facebook page, Rob and Rat's Wow Podcast, Rob Rat Podcast on Instagram, or they can just email worldofwonder2019@gmail.com.
Fantastic. Well, I think that comes to an end for our podcast today on this alien world that we're investigating.
I enjoyed that. No, it was good. It was
so let me just get your thoughts. How do you feel?
I still feel hearing the guys' stories, it does make you think a bit more, but I don't know, until I see something myself, I'm still a bit sceptical. But I don't know, it's hard to know.
Do you think you've ever seen anything yourself?
I don't think so, Robert.
I've often looked up at the skies and kind of just had a look, but it could always just be like a shooting star or a satellite or
the odd light. I think everyone has seen something to do with weird lights in the sky, maybe when you've been...
And it does pique your wonder as to what that is.
Yeah, but everyone, no matter who you are, on a clear night you often look up, and for a while you might be thinking, God, it's so vast and whatever.
Yeah.
There's bound to be something out there somewhere, and if we find it, it'll be on the show.
Yeah. We'll get them in, we'll interview them.
So that concludes episode 2 of the World of Wonder podcast.
That's it, and you can join us next week.
Next week, I'm looking forward to that one. We're going to be looking into the world of real life superheroes.
Alright guys, thanks for listening.
You have been listening to the Rob Rat Podcast. Be sure to check out our social media for updates on the next episode. And if you liked what you heard, then let us know by hitting the subscribe button, sending us a message, and telling a friend, because that's how the podcast grows. Thanks for listening.